English translation 418th contact, Saturday, 6th May 2006, 15:02 hours.
I was just able to give Pius some more instructions on reforestation, since we have to replant the hillside behind the garage. I am glad that you are here so soon after the correction work, because I am still in a state of turmoil, so I am waiting for your answer. Especially since there was another blow to my head last night. But now you are warmly welcome, dear friend. Sit down and be greeted.
What else has happened?
I would like to tell you later, if I may. Let me hear what you have to say first. Did you and Ketzel and those you consulted find any advice?
With your permission, I would like to write down your answer with the computer and have it available at the General Assembly tonight.
But I only want to write down your answer, which refers to the unpleasant incident.
You can do that, and I think it is a good idea. Unfortunately, we have not become conclusive, although we have considered many possibilities. We must follow our directives, as well as the given order and rules of the mission. Thus, the problem was submitted to the High Council, which passed it on to the viewers of the time, Arahat Athersata level, because this level has to lay down first and foremost those rules and regulations which arise in relation to the mission and its management. But Arahat Athersata is also responsible for the foresight you require with regard to the continued existence and continuation of the mission. Such a foresight has been carried out, whereby it has shown that an organizational change has to be carried out regarding the leadership of the core group, which also requires various changes in the articles of the bylaws and also, on a small scale, in the statutes. But for the latter, this does not mean a change, and does not have to be decided by a passive General Assembly. The main texts and those to be changed must therefore be made in the statutes, in the following sense. The viewers of the time consider that the position of the leader of the core group and of the entire Phi-Gu Association, including all the groupings, will no longer be occupied after your death, and therefore will no longer exist. Your office as leader of the Phi-Gu Association is therefore only given once, and only during your lifetime. The reason for this lies in the fact that it has been seen from the foresight that you cannot be replaced as leader by any person in succession, because for this office until the distant future, all the necessary prerequisites are lacking in every respect in all the persons designated for this office, as the future review by the viewers of the time has shown. Unfortunately, the review of the future has shown that all the designated leaders, who would have consisted exclusively of infallible persons of the past, have fundamentally deviated from the line set at that time and have become or will become arrogant and selfish, etc., making the office of a leader of the Phi-Gu Association impossible. It follows from this that after your death, there can be no successor to your office, so that in the leadership of the core group and the entire association, an organizational change must be made, as the viewers of the time or the level of Arahat Athersata find. The change is based on the fact that the entire core group, still under your leadership, is already preparing to take the leadership into their own hands. In the framework that in the future the entire group slowly begins to take over and carry out all your tasks in a decisive consistency, which you have carried out yourself up to now. So, everything that has to be done to lead the core group and the Phi-Gu Association should be increased, determined and carried out through ideas, suggestions and necessities by the members as a whole, whereby you will be more and more reserved, so that the members themselves have to do the comprehensive thought work in every respect. For the actual implementation of the resolutions, the entire board of directors is basically responsible, as is stated in the statutes and bylaws. However, each individual member must also accept his or her own responsibility and fulfill the imposed duty in every necessary respect. So from now on, the whole core group has to learn to jointly bear the responsibility of leadership and to maintain the leadership framework as it was usefully, advantageously, progressively, and responsibly cultivated and handled by you. Learning within this framework must begin now, for as you know, everything takes time, and this time is no longer given in great measure. So the whole of the explanation should be discussed at today's meeting because there is an urgency for it. That is the essence of what I have to tell you on behalf of the viewers of the time.
Well, that knocks my socks off. I did not come to this solution because from time immemorial a leadership was provided, as Arahata Thursada had determined. Therefore I assumed this, which has now led me into the devil's kitchen with my thoughts and feelings for 3 weeks. But the solution is good and solves the whole problem. This in contrast to the irrational suggestions I was given, that nevertheless everything will just go on if I do not give up. These proposals, in fact, illogically fail to take into account that continuing on alone will not yield any results unless there is massive consistency. Many humans believe that it is easy to carry something on successfully, but they do not realize that success cannot be achieved if there is not the necessary consistency.
That is right, because if the consistency in one thing is missing, then it is doomed to failure from the very beginning. But this is not recognized when thought of illogically. And as for the determination of the viewers of the time, it was also so from our own part. That was the reason why we did not find advice. Like you, we too could not ignore the old destiny because it concerned the viewers of the time, so that only they could change it, which they have now done by their new destiny. But what has happened again?
Well, that is easy to say. Yesterday in the early evening, Atlant told me briefly and concisely that he was temporarily disengaging himself from the group and would not be taking his place as leader. When I said that this could not be handled just like that, but that the whole core group General Assembly had to decide about it, he simply refused to attend the General Assembly to answer questions. This incorrectness will probably happen this evening.
This is in fact an evil incorrectness, which is not compatible with the statutes and bylaws of the Figu Association. Nothing can be done against this unfortunate and irrational ricochet, so that the core group only has to conciliate the incorrect request and even incorrectly agree to a 2-year dispensation. All that remains to be said is that the rationality and the sense of responsibility can be expected to prevail after all. The actions of your son are in breach of the statutes and the bylaws, and they also lack proper conduct, manners, style, and correctness of form, as well as self-confidence and courage to face the questions and answers before the General Assembly. As is unfortunately the case with many young people, they believe they are misunderstood by the older generation and believe that they, even as juveniles, are more mature and more far-sighted than the older ones who have already lived many years longer and have had many experiences and lived through them. This is a peculiarity of many young humans, as it is not only the case on the earth, but also with us and with all humanities throughout the universe. Young humans are very often hot-tempered in their many-sided desires. For many are hotheads who are of the mistaken opinion that their knowledge and ability, as well as understanding and rationality, are superior to that of the elders. Accordingly, their questionable and objectionable behavior towards the older generations, of whom they believe themselves to be misunderstood with their ideas and desires, etc., is then also misunderstood. Many young humans as a whole lack the necessary perception, the cognition and awareness of the facts and their reality, as well as the necessary knowledge and the experience resulting from it, and the necessary living through of it, and consequently the necessary essence of the whole, is also lacking, precisely wisdom. However, life experience, as well as the living of it, is of enormous importance, because only through it is the valuable wisdom of life created. And only when this is given, understanding and rationality can really be used in a valuable wise, and through this, progress and appropriate development can be achieved. But a mature intellect and a mature rationality are also necessary in order to be able to give advice to fellow humans, and also to guide them in an appropriate wise, so that they are able to work their way up in themselves to progressive successes and to the consciousness-based evolution. Youthful hot-headedness, however, cannot keep up in this respect, because it creates discord and inhibits progress, because it is not thought, felt, and acted on the basis of knowledge, experience, lived experience and wisdom, but out of a desire to overestimate and inflate oneself, whereby a certain degree of megalomania is also present, but this is generally not recognized by the young ones. Only when the youth become real adults, which often takes several decades, do they succeed in making valuable perceptions in the right kind and wise, and in achieving cognitions as well as skills and knowledge, and making experiences that they can also live through, whereby they then gain wisdom from the whole.
Wise words. There is an old story that goes like this. A boy of 7 says, "My father knows everything." When the boy is 14 years old, he says, "My father knows a lot." And then at 21 he says, "My father knows quite a few things." After that, the boy of 28 starts the phase where he says, "My father knows nothing." Then the phase of independence and learning about life experience, etc. begins, where he becomes 56 years old and becomes a man, and learns and recognizes and says, "My father knew some things." 7 years later, at the age of 63, my father knew a lot. And another 7 years later, at the age of 70, the older man then says, "My father knew everything."
A little story taken from reality.
Exactly. But what do you think about the fact that weeks ago there was also talk elsewhere of whitewashing, which the core group was accused of?
It must be clearly stated that in contrast to the religions and sects and their feigned innocence, an open and true word is spoken by you and in the whole Figu Association, as well as an open and honest language, which is neither a form of whitewashing, flattery, embellishment, adulation, pseudo-friendliness and prettying things up, nor servility, sycophancy, fawning, hypocrisy or dishonesty, falsehood, and sanctimoniousness, as is characteristic of religious and sectarian hypocrisy on the whole.
Also a good and clear word? Thanks. But look here, this is an excerpt from Volume 7, page 429, in reference to our 256th official contact conversation on the 13th of May, 1996.
Bata reads,
Well, you know that I once drew the attention of the Chinese government and the Chinese embassies to the inhumane sentencing and contempt for humanity in China, with the torture and death penalty brochure. Unfortunately, there was never any reaction from within the Chinese region. Is it not possible to get at these humans?
The road is long and extremely burdensome and arduous, and the inhumanities in China will continue for a very long time. This both in politics and in the attitudes of an enormous number of humans. The horrors that are being committed in China are even more horrible than is known in the public media, because things are happening in China that are beneath all human dignity and humanity. One should only think of the fact that humans are sentenced to death and executed by official courts on a massive scale, only to get hold of the organs of the ones who have been killed, which are then sold for a lot of money and reimplanted or transplanted into those who can pay. It does not matter whether convicted persons are really guilty or innocent, or whether they are potato or bicycle thieves or pimps or murderers.
I have now found confirmation of this in the Zürcher Oberländer on the 20th of April, in this little article here. If you want to read it.
Of course. Thank you.
Ptah reads,
As they say in your country, the sun brings it out in the daylight. But it is also a fact that the truth always comes to light, even when it is slandered by adversaries who, through their lies and false accusations, want to make themselves great and put themselves into the light of publicity.
There's no disputing your words. But look here, a certain Paul Bade wrote a book called The Divine Face, and subtitled The Adventurous Search for the True Face of Jesus. Sensational discovery image of Jesus on shell silk original relic of Christianity found again. Pope travels to Manipello, a Vatican crime novel. The Welt editor, Paul Bade, is certain to have solved the mystery of the Veil of Veronica, which has been missing for 400 years. Bade, we now know what Jesus looked like. In his book, the Rome correspondent of Die Welt describes how the mysterious shell silk veil was tracked down, and what a complex puzzle he had to put together in an extremely exciting way. In his analysis of the possible meaning of the recovered shell silk cloth, Paul Bade meticulously strings together circumstantial evidence. The cloth shows the face of Jesus. How the image of the Savior on the relic was created, however, remains a mystery. The book comprises 318 pages, 16 color illustrations, and is bound in 1422 format. Cardinal Joachim Meisner of Cologne is said to have looked at the cloth in Manipello and said, "Do not doubt that it is genuine." Benedict XVI has informed himself extensively about the discovery of Paul Bade. The Pope is even considering visiting the mussel silk scarf in Manipello and worshipping it as a great relic of Christianity. Do you have any idea what is behind all this? For my part, I myself have never heard of this shell silk cloth.
I do have some knowledge of it. Yes, and it is explained very briefly. As with the Shroud of Turin, this assertion that the image of Emmanuel is supposed to be on the silk shroud is also an absolute nonsense. So you have not missed any knowledge.
Thank you. Then I have no more questions now. But what I cannot get out of my mind is all the unpleasantness. If we could exchange a few more words about it, I would be grateful.
You are very sad and have extremely sorrowful thoughts. But I am also concerned about this, and so is Ketzel. So all three of us are concerned. So I too feel the need to consult with you.
Then let me ask you this.